In the 90s as a kid, everything was simpler. The year was 1993 and I was still in elementary school. Living on a farm at the time, I would usually either chase and annoy the livestock or stay in and play video games. There was literally nothing else to do at the time, and seeing as my complexion is about as pale as a sheet, I usually chose the latter. The consoles of choice were the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, playing games like Mortal Kombat, Aladdin, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Shinobi 3. On the PC, I'd played games like Duke Nukem 2, Commander Keen, Biomenace, and Halloween Harry. The industry was largely dominated by colourful, cartoonish 2D side-scrollers with simplistic sound effects and animation. So when Doom hit the market in late 1993, it changed everything. Wolfenstein 3D may have been a standout for the FPS genre, and there's a few other first-person shooters listed on Wikipedia that most people would only know about if they actually looked them up. But Doom was the first game that really cemented shooters as a genre that was worth paying attention to. At the time, the gaming demographic was very small. If you mentioned video games to someone in the early 90s, they'd invariably think of Super Mario Bros. Or something along those lines, and the majority of video game discussion was usually around whether or not Sega was better than Nintendo, or vice versa. Doom was an objectively interesting spectacle that gamers and non-gamers alike could appreciate. Gabe Newell himself has said that it was the first game that ever scared him, and I'm sure he took reference from it when he created Half-Life. Another first-person shooter focusing on abandoned bases and monsters coming through portals. There had been mature games like this before, sure, but nothing quite this intense. Doom had atmosphere and it had tension. The lights dimmed and flickered and environments echoed with the distant grunts of unseen demons. It was also full of these wonderful first-time moments aimed at frightening and exciting the player. Like the first time in Episode 1 Level 8 where those two Hell Knights came out of the walls. The first time you got your hands on a shotgun, rocket launcher or BFG. Or the first time you caught a Cacademon's fireball with your face and saw the amount of health it took off. The gameplay was smooth, fast, fluid and engaging, and its real genius was the simplicity. You just moved around, collected keys and ammo, and killed things. Attacks could come from every possible direction, and did, frequently. A common trick I'm sure one of the level designers at id Software had a joy implementing was putting hordes of waiting enemies behind locked doors, or inside hidden passageways, that opened as you walked past them, often after you've reached a dead end. Now, the first time I played Doom, it was the shareware version, which came on a pathetic 3.5-inch floppy disk, which was pretty standard for the time. In all honesty, as a 7-year-old kid, it probably wasn't the best game for me to be playing, but my parents of course had no idea. They'd seen me kill Nazis in Wolfenstein 3D and rip out someone's spinal column in Mortal Kombat, so how much worse than that could it possibly be? Well, aside from the constant nightmares I'd have, dreaming of imps and cacodemons hunting me mercilessly, it also became the central focus of my young existence. At one point I even had my hair cut to look like the Doomguy. There's even a 35mm film photo of me somewhere brandishing the iconic military crew cut like a trooper. After I nagged my dad incessantly, he finally bought me the full version, I think just to shut me up. I remember sleepovers where I would load it up through the DOS prompt and my friends and I would all sit around a single flickering CRT monitor. Most of the time we're even content to just watch someone else play, spectating with a mouthful of gummy bears or a clenched fist filled with chicken-flavoured twisties. It could be unabashedly difficult at times as well, and it wasn't uncommon to be backed into a corner and thoroughly ripped apart by a crew of pinky demons, or melted from a barrage of imp fireballs. This was before mouse look was integrated into games, so navigating corridors and slowly turning to see a bunch of undead soldiers moving towards you could be pretty damn harrowing. Even when it's played with a more modern control scheme, I've seen so-called hardcore gamers, you know the types raised on Call of Duty and Battlefield, get their asses handed to them repeatedly. Sometimes I often wonder what the industry would have been like if Doom had never been made. Aside from its graphics engine, its influence in other areas is also undeniable. Whether or not you've played it doesn't really matter, as you've played it in one form or another in any of the dozen shooting games that have been released over the years. The mid to late 90s was permeated with what was referred to as the Doom clones, games using similar engines that tried to cash in on Doom's gameplay and style. Shadow Warrior, Blood, and Hexen to name a few. which all themselves have gone on to create their own legions of sequels, mods, and fans alike. Even the big bad Duke Nukem 3D owes its existence to Doom in some form. It's one of those games I can just load it up at any time and still blast my way through all 3 episodes in a matter of hours. I can still remember the locations of all the keys, how to get the super armor on the very first level, and where to find the plasma rifle on the first map of episode 2. I know that IDDQD gives me God mode, IDKFA gives me all weapons, and ID Clip lets me walk through walls, and I also remember trying to use those cheats for the first time in Heretic. Few games have left a lasting impact on me, and even less I still find objectively enjoyable to this day. And out of all the shooting games that have come and gone over the years, it still stands the test of time. If it was a painting, it would be in the Louvre. If it was a film, it would be added to the National Film Registry and deemed culturally significant. I really think that a few years from now, when historians write about the last few decades and document gaming in general, that Doom's going to be listed up there with things like Pong, Asteroids, Super Mario Bros. And Pac-Man, as the games that helped shape the industry into what it has eventually become. Rip and fucking tear.